Hey guys, Derek here from Back to Reality. So some of you will recall Paula and I were recently away from the homestead for about a week or so due to a much needed and long awaited backcountry kayaking trip. While we were away, our garden did really well thanks in part to all of the permaculture techniques that we put into it while building it. By emulating nature as much as possible, our garden is now able to fend for itself without any weeding or watering or any other maintenance while we're temporarily away. However, unfortunately, not every aspect of our homestead has been designed with automation in mind. For example, over the past year or so, we've been fostering a pretty significant relationship with a lot of the wildlife that share our property. Much of that relationship has been experienced by simply observing them from afar and making sure that, at least while they're here, we'll keep them as safe as possible. But for some of our feathered and furry friends, our relationship has become much more symbiotic in nature. You see, throughout the seasons, we've put in a pretty serious commitment to our bird feeders. And in return for the safe and steady food supply, we've been rewarded with the opportunity to enjoy the beautiful and consistent presence of over 20 different species of wild birds. Witnessing the changing of the seasons through their migratory departures and arrivals has been calming and reassuring and de-stressing. But it's not all just about the birds, because the abundance of seeds has also provided a safe haven for a number of squirrels and chipmunks, and even our sweet-smelling hummingbird feeder is sometimes visited by a family of bees, which may not sound all that great until you remember that those very same insects help to pollinate our wildflowers and our crabapple trees and our vegetable garden. Now, some may point out that there are certain risks involved with attracting so many small animals so close to our cabin, and they're not wrong. But the occasional capture and relocation is a pretty small price to pay for the endless hours of entertainment that they otherwise provide. And besides, when you live this far out into the countryside, temporary rodent roommates are a fact of life, no matter what you do. And of course, we realize that these creatures would survive just fine without us. It's summertime after all. Food is abundant everywhere this time of year. But we've really come to value this relationship, and we wouldn't want our temporary neglect to damage the routine that we've established. So we needed to figure out a way to continue feeding them daily even when we are on vacation. So we considered a number of elaborate schemes and checked out a bunch of overpriced products. But in the end, a simple and effective solution occurred to us while having an impromptu pizza dinner with my parents. You see, they happened to mention that they'd recently replaced the automatic food dispenser for their dog, Oakley. Oakley had been using her old food dispenser for quite some time, but due to some new dietary restrictions, she needed a new one with a lot more accuracy, which meant that her old dispenser was potentially up for grabs. So with the help of a marker and the lid from our pizza box, the four of us put our heads together and came up with the perfect solution to our bird feeder problem. Essentially, the dog food dispenser has two primary parts: a hopper that holds the food and a base that releases some of the food on a timer. The releasing mechanism is pretty simple. It's basically just a small battery-operated motor that spins a flexible gear when scheduled using the small LCD display. This dispenser already did nearly everything we required of it. We could set the times for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We could even tell it how much food to release, up to 3 cups per meal for a daily total of 9 cups, which was perfect because we'd already determined that on average we were filling our feeders with about 12 cups per day, and we figured the slight decrease wouldn't be enough for our friends to notice. The only problem was that the food hopper wasn't large enough to hold a week's worth of seeds, so we'd have to make some adjustments. Now, we store our bird seed in 2 of these metal and supposedly animal-proof cans. One of them was getting pretty old and beat up, and so we were already considering replacing it, which meant that it was an excellent candidate for being converted into a much larger food hopper. All we had to do was figure out a way to connect it to the dispenser's base, and here's what we came up with. This PVC dryer vent reducing coupler, which can be picked up at any hardware store for about $5, just happened to fit perfectly inside the opening to the base. So we traced it onto the bottom of the can, made a pilot hole with a drill, and then cut away the rest of the metal with a jigsaw. After test fitting the coupler inside the can, trimming some of the unnecessary plastic, and finally cutting 2 slots to match the tabs inside the opening of the base, We were left with a handy little adapter that would securely mount the can on top of the dispenser. All that was left was to add a few pieces of scrap wood for support legs, and in less than 30 minutes, we'd completed the first prototype of our automatic bird feeder. We put it to the test for a couple of days, and it worked pretty well. We ended up making a couple of minor adjustments, such as raising the legs slightly to allow the seeds to scatter when hitting the porch floor, and securing the can to the railing and screwing on the lid, just in case we received any nighttime visits from some crafty raccoons. But all in all, our solution was exactly what we needed. So now, 3 times per day, the timer goes off and 3 cups of birdseed are released onto the floor for our hungry friends to enjoy. And it turns out it's a good thing that we secured the can to the railing, because we have had regular nighttime visits to clean up the leftovers. Oh yeah, and we also learned that we shouldn't leave the can full of seeds unattended with the dispenser removed, because it turns out that the squirrels can be pretty crafty too. See you guys soon.